I'm going to be sharing a book called Grandma's Records. In the 1960s, the narrator spends his summers living with his grandmother. The author's message is enjoying music together is a way of sharing part of yourself with your loved ones. Music links you to your traditions and your past, and music can carry you back to special times and places in your memories. Okay, the author of the book right here, he happens to be the boy in the story. The story is told in first person, and the reader or listener learns how important music is to his life. The summers with his grandma and her music help the narrator to become the person that he is today. The genre is realistic fiction, but it is based on real events from the author's life. And also, it influenced him very strongly. This is a picture of a vinyl record, and they've come back recently, but for a long time, children weren't seeing things like this. They were seeing just CDs or, and DVDs, but for music, CDs. This book does have some Spanish words in it. This book he dedicated to his grandmother, and it says, "For my grandmother, Carmen Maldonado, 1909 to 1983, this song is for you." So that would make her 74 years old when she passed away, which is kind of young. And the pictures you're going to see illustrate, the time in the 1960s. So the furniture and the lamps and that kind of thing, and their clothing that they wear. Every year, right after the last day of school, I'd pack a suitcase with my cool summer clothes, my favorite toys, and a sketchbook. Then my dog Daisy and I were off to Grandma's apartment in El Barrio. Because my parents worked, Grandma's apartment was my summer home. From the time my parents dropped me off until the day they picked me up, Grandma wrapped me in a world of music. So there's a metaphor right away, and you can tell by Eric's expression on his face that he just adores his grandmother. And look how happy he is to go with his sketchbook. So he likes to draw as well. And there's Daisy. Sometimes when she played a record, we would dance together. Other times, she would dance alone and tell me stories about growing up in Puerto Rico. When Grandma played a merengue from the Dominican Republic, her hips would sway from side to side. As her favorite salsa record played, she'd say, "Just listen to that conga," while she played an imaginary drum. And there she is swaying and dancing, and you can see the styles from the 60s. Especially the old-fashioned radio and phonograph player, the record player. Grandma liked all types of music, but one record was very special to her. Whenever she played it, she would put her hand over her heart and close her eyes as she sang. When it was over, Grandma would sometimes sit quietly, thinking about Grandpa in the old days in Tansursi, her hometown. So that was in Puerto Rico. Sometimes, Grandma said, a song can say everything that is in your heart as if it were written just for you. My favorite days were the ones when Grandma would tell me, "You picked the records today." No matter what I would choose, Grandma would always say, "Siempre me gusta tu selección." I always like your selection. And forgive my Spanish. It's not what it's supposed to sound like. Sometimes I would sneak in Grandma's special song just to watch her put her hand over her heart and sing. Then she'd always ask, "Como tú sabes?" How did you know? If it was too hot to go outside, I'd spend hours looking through all the Grandma's album covers. I'd pick out my favorites and make sketches of the art. As I drew, I could see the record covers coming to life and the bands performing right there in Grandma's living room. Grandma never went to any nightclubs to see her favorite bands perform. She was happy just to stay home with me and listen to her scratchy records. But Santurce was home to hundreds of musicians, and she knew a lot of people who played on the records. Grandma's nephew, Sammy, played percussion in Rafael Cortijo's band, the best band in Puerto Rico. One day when the band was in town, Sammy brought over Cortijo and the band's leader, Ismael Rivera, for a surprise visit. Home-cooked meals were hard to come by on the road, and they couldn't pass up the chance to taste Grandma's favorite arroz con gandules, which is rice and pigeon peas. So it's always good to get a home-cooked meal, especially if it's made from Grandma. While eating dessert, Sammy had another surprise for Grandma. 2 tickets to the band's first New York concert and their brand new record, which wasn't even in stores yet. I raced over to the record player, thrilled to be the first New Yorker to hear their latest music. The next day, Grandma and I spent all day shopping for clothes to wear to the show. She even made me get a haircut. The theater was all the way up in the Bronx. We took the subway there, and Grandma was nervous during the whole ride. When we got to the theater, we walked past the long line of people and went right inside because of our special tickets. The theater was bigger than all the movie theaters I had ever gone to. The band made a spectacular entrance. Suddenly, the theater went dark. Tiny lights glittered, and a loud siren filled the air. I heard Grandma gasp, "Ah, Dios mío," which means, "Oh my God." She thought something was wrong. The darkened stage seemed to fill with people running back and forth in confusion. Next, everything went dark again, and a loud and steady conga beat began, boom bach, boom bach, boom bach. Then the lights came on with a loud boom, and the band began to play the song called Elena's Candy, which looks like El Bombom de Elena. You can see their attire, what they're wearing, and the musical instruments. A lot of onomatopoeia on that page. Look at how the author did the spotlight. And the author is also the illustrator in this book. Grandma and I were surprised at how different the music sounded live. The musicians made familiar songs fresh by adding new musical phrases and words. Before the last song began, Ismael said, "This one goes out to Carmen," and he pointed to Grandma as he sang her special song. I looked at her as she put her hand over her heart, raised the other hand, closed her eyes, and began to sing along. Ismael was singing to my grandma. Then I looked around and realized that everyone in the theater had their hands over their hearts too. And as I'm reading this, I'm getting goosebumps. After the show, we went backstage. I asked Ismael how he knew about Grandma's song. He explained that the song was about coming to a new country and having to leave those you love behind. People put their hands over their hearts to show that their hearts remain in Puerto Rico, even though they may be far away. Now I understood why Grandma's song was special to so many people. Over the next days and weeks, Grandma and I put our own shows imitating Cortijo's band. Grandma wished such a special night had been captured in a recording so that she could listen to it again and again. But even then, I knew that a concert is so special because it leaves you with the memory of a magical moment in time. As I got older, I started bringing over my records to play for Grandma. Brazilian music, jazz, and even rap. She loved listening to it all. So here he is, still as a young boy that summer, and then much older on the next page. And then there he is in his own house years later. Even now, when I'm playing CDs in my studio, I imagine I'm back in Grandma's living room and she turns to me and says, "You be the DJ today. Siempre me gusta tu selección." And as I work, Grandma's special song surrounds me. And then on the following page, you have that song in Spanish, and then at the bottom, it's written in English as well. And then the last page in the book is about the three gentlemen that were playing in that concert that came to her house for that special meal, and they gave her the concert tickets.